Right, good morning, Paul. Hello.
Hello there.
Right, Paul, thanks for joining us this morning. Really appreciate it, especially on a Sunday morning.
My wife enjoyed the alarm call.
I bet. So we're going to give everyone a minute or two just for anyone that's kind of dialing in and getting ready. So, but yeah, how are things going? You guys busy? You see your vans around everywhere at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. We're incredibly busy and have been, I think with all sort of companies in the construction industry, especially, it would appear that this year, unfortunately, because people aren't able to, go away on holiday and things like that, and we've all been stuck in our homes, frankly, for longer than some of us might wish for, those home improvement projects that people might have been sort of considering and putting off and things like that. Many people are now sort of jumping in and sort of getting the ball rolling with that. So we have, and our industry generally has got the very happy problem in many ways that, supply chains are actually under quite a bit of stress at the moment, in truth. Our lead times are much longer right now than they would have been. Typically, we used to quote an 8 to 10 week lead time. We're now looking a solid 12 to 14 weeks right now. And I know that is the case across the whole of the industry.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, appreciate that you've taken the time to prepare some information to take us through for some great tips. So what I'll do is share the screen, and for anyone that's now watching, you can fill in any questions you've got for Paul, and we'll get to those at the end. And Paul's actually around on the live chat as well later by his profile in the exhibitor section. So we will get into your top tips for windows and doors. And I've got to be honest, I had no idea the amount of options and just everything that there is since, kind of looking at your website. I guess I was blown away by how much there is. So I've been looking forward to this talk all weekend. So.
Yeah, exactly. And that's probably one of the overarching things to say is you've hit the nail on the head there, Chris, is most people don't realize now just quite what a wide range of choice that there is available, both in terms of types of products, quality of products as well. That's really important, of course. And then, just general look of what you're hoping to, what you want to achieve. And there's different profiles, so as a very good example, Aluminium Windows, there's at least 5 different profiles that I can think of that are all quite distinct from each other. So yes, you might be thinking, oh, well, yeah, we're going to have aluminium windows on this project. Okay, fine. Which one? It's not as simple before as actually there's just one aluminium window. That's it. There's a heritage style aluminium window. There's a contemporary aluminium window. There's a classic aluminium window, and there's a flush aluminium window as well. There's 4 straight off the bat. And then even within those, there's different types depending upon sizes and so on and so forth. So and there's tilt and turn aluminium window. There you go, there's a 5th one. So there's all sorts of different choice. There's then all sorts of different qualities as well, and depending upon frankly what your budget is and what you want to spend. Sliding doors is a perfect example of that. There's 7, we have literally 7 different sliding doors in aluminium that we can do, most of which are on display in our showroom as well. So, and this is, I think, probably the thing that we encourage more than anything in the first instance is to get you into our showroom sooner rather than later, so that you can have a look, so that you can get an understanding of what is available, what best suits your project, what best suits your budget. And then we can, give you a quote then based upon that, because otherwise you're kind of shooting in the breeze a little bit, as I said before, if you sort of say, oh, Paul, well, just give me a quote for aluminium windows. Okay, which ones? Because there can be a big cost differential.
So just for the benefit of everyone dialing as well, I guess, so just in terms of where you're based and how people can actually kind of interact. And like you mentioned, you've got lots of things for people to come and see and actually interact with. So that's in Bracknell, right?
That's right. Yeah. So we have a large showroom in Bracknell. I should stress though that we cover a very, very large area these days in terms of our operations. So we literally cover the whole of the south of England, from Southend, northeast Essex sort of thing, up to Cambridge, across to Stratford certainly, and then across to Bristol in the west, and basically all the way down to the south coast, Kent, Bournemouth, etc., all points in between. So we are a large regional company these days. We've been established for 35 years. We have a £6.5 million turnover. So we are small enough to care, but large enough that you can feel very safe in the fact that we do, and actually that we do a lot of these type of projects as well, sort of refurbishment projects, large scale new build projects. Our surveyors are used to working with builders all the time, and so on and so forth.
Okay. Cool. So your first area, and even breaking it down to different styles of projects. And I know a couple of people that have gone down and they've had a very contemporary kind of style. And I guess I never actually considered just how much of an impact like the kind of the glass, like the windows, the doors, actually sets a tone really for it, doesn't it? From the project.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, these days, there are. I mean, there's lots of subsets within this, but I would say there's generally very, very broadly 3 different sort of looks projects, if you like.
Yeah.
The first is the contemporary, which hopefully we've got on the screen there now.
Yeah.
And obviously that is incredibly popular, whether that be a complete new build, which many of these that you're seeing on the screen now are. But also, very, very popular, of course, with sort of rear extensions, typically where people are, enlarging the kitchen stroke, dining stroke, general living area, because that, and I'm sure, our fellow builders and architects and kitchen guys have touched on this over this weekend, that, that sort of all in, one space living is very, very popular these days. And obviously for that sort of thing, you want lots of glass in that. So typically you will tend to go for a more contemporary look lends itself to that sort of project.
I liked this one here on the screen, Paul, just because it was not necessarily like the look of the house was contemporary, but I liked how kind of that almost sort of fusion of different styles with the glazing that made it feel modern.
That's right. Yeah, and exactly that. We could have done a completely different. We could have pretty much done sash windows there, for example. Sash windows, and made that house look exceptionally different to what it looks there. So your choice of fenestration is actually really key to the feel of the project. It would have been very easy to have gone down a completely different route with the look of that house, and suddenly the house looks completely different.
So really, saying you've got a design service so I could actually see my house, like if that's my house, I could actually see the different styles.
That's exactly it. Yeah, we do a 3D visualization service. Unfortunately, actually, we should put a shot of that up, and that's my fault, so apologies for that. But and we are actually doing a special offer on that at the moment, for the purposes of this exhibition weekend, which is 50% off our design service. And it is incredible. I would highly recommend it. It's actually incredibly good value for money. I mean, typically, you can just do an elevation as well. You don't have to do the whole house, so we charge per elevation. Typically for a single elevation, you're probably going to be looking about £250 per elevation. So, to do, and actually, to do a whole house can work out cheaper. So typically to do a whole house is probably £700 to £800, but actually we're offering 50% off that at the moment. And that's incredibly useful if you are thinking of doing something, reasonably radical to your property. And it has helped many of my clients make choices about exactly what sort of route they go down. And in fact, there's a house in a minute where which we have got a picture of, which I can mention that on.
So if we go down, because then obviously contemporary is not going to be for everyone.
So classic, this is more your classic style where obviously the house might be built already, of course, and you are looking at sort of making changes. But obviously, again, with a new build, you might wish to go down that route. Now, actually, as a very good example, that one specifically, that picture is just very standard PVC windows in actual fact, but again, within the right setting, can still look quite nice. And obviously, frankly, that's a very cost-effective option as well. But yeah, on all of these actually that you're seeing are actually PVC windows that we're looking at in these pictures. So you've got this flush design as well, which is incredibly popular right now. It doesn't need to be particularly expensive, and in fact, actually, typically is no more expensive than a standard PVC window.
What I would sort of have in my head for a PVC window. I guess that looks very kind of sort of, I guess, more modern and sleek.
Yeah, that's right. This flush profile is incredibly popular now. I would say must easily be 50% of the installations we do now with this flush profile, because it is. I mean, it's literally maybe 10 to 20 pounds more expensive than a standard PVC window. So it's per unit, of course. So there's very little cost differential in it, and it's incredibly popular. This is a project I was talking about. Actually, we did a lot of 3D visualizations on this one. This is a farmhouse in Hurst, an old farmhouse, 19th century, and he had very old, black, hideous, frankly, probably installed in about the 1970s windows in there. It made the inside very dark, the inside of the property very dark. The outside was all, because these are very small windows as well, was poorly executed. There was heavy lead work. And we just literally, and we did do quite a few visualizations on this. We tried different colors. Obviously, we went with white in the end there, but we looked at agate grey, for instance, and which is a very popular, and French grey, very popular sort of greeny greys at the moment. But in the end, we plumped for this white, and it just completely transformed this property. I mean, all our customers are very, very happy, of course, but these customers stand out for me as someone who were particularly thrilled with the outcome, because it completely not only transformed the outside of the house, but completely brightened the inside of the house as well, to a massive extent, just literally letting more light in.
Sure. Okay. Good.
Yeah,
and then
that sort of project is always very, very fulfilling, and that's the sort of project that we love. We're not just going to suggest, oh well, just let's replace like for like. Let's look at this. Let's take a step back. All of our designers have got good, strong design backgrounds. We're much more creative than hopefully your standard double glazing company. At the end of the day, we like to think ourselves more as an architectural design company than actually a double glazing company.
And this one here, so was this a pub and a restaurant? Is that why that sign's there?
Yeah, that's right. This wasn't one of my personal projects, so I must admit it's not as familiar to me, this one. But yeah, this was a converted pub, I understand. Yeah, I think we actually did aluminium windows on the outside of that one. Again, that's a fairly standard PVC window on that, believe it or not. Again, it's a period property. But again, with the right look, it can, there's so many choices that you can have with these. Yeah, timber windows would have looked great there as well, I'll be honest with you. But timber windows are probably 50% more expensive than those. Probably more than that. Probably more like 70 to 80% more expensive than those PVC windows would have been. Then you've got wow features. This is what people are always looking for, of course, when they're doing a build project like this. Lanterns that you can see at the top there, they're partially hidden there, but those sorts of skylights are very popular. Obviously, you've got a massive run of bifolding doors there. What you've also got in the sort of the middle of that picture, just behind the plant on the worktop, actually the work surface, that is sort of a structural pillar there as well, just to help support. So you've essentially got what looks like a massive run of bifolds there, but you know, you can hide structural pillars quite nicely there without it having to look deadly obvious that there is a structural pillar in there, you know, because again, you know, to have a massive run, it does get very expensive from a build point of view without, you know, having that sort of structural pillar in the way. But you can do, you know, I've done projects. I've got one at the moment where they've literally got a 10-meter wide sliding door that we're doing, for instance. That is huge.
With so instances like that, so would people bring their like architectural plans to you and say what they've got in mind, and you can then help say, well, actually, great, yeah, we could actually, so
that's right. And if we look at a few other of these pictures again, Chris, I know we've got a few sort of lined up here. You know, we help interpret those plans and, you know, advise on, you know, how, you know, what impact that is going to be on cost. This is a lovely sort of timber bifold door there, for instance. They can look absolutely stunning. This is an incredible project. Again, not one of my personal projects. Our managing director actually did this one, but obviously, you know, using minimal frame sliding door technology. But again, you know, as a very good example, those sliding doors would have probably been the best part of £30,000, for instance, because we're using a very high-end sliding door there. But there are options that we could have done that for probably more like £15,000. You know, so there are, you know, large variations in price dependent upon exactly, you know, what you want to do. Frankly, how deep your pockets are. You know, but yeah, okay. So then we move on to the different materials, and we've sort of touched on this pretty much within our conversation anyway. PVC has obviously been the go-to for many sort of home sort of replacements. As we've seen earlier, you know, PVC technology has come on enormously over the last few years, so that now you can get PVC windows that very specifically are designed to look exactly like timber windows. You know, we have one range called Evolution, which are literally, you know, if you stood 4 meters away, I would challenge you to be able to tell the difference between that and a timber window. Aluminium windows, again, we've got a very, this is our, that's the heritage aluminium window that we're looking there, but again, there's those different options that I mentioned earlier. Timber obviously is classic. There is a certain beauty about timber. I'm a bit of a Windows geek. I've been doing this for 16 years now, so it does rub off. And there is a beauty about timber that, as I said before, okay, the Evolution is a great window that I mentioned, that timber alternative window, but there is just something about timber that has that elegance that is difficult to completely replicate.
What do you think through, like, think ahead with timber then, in terms of like upkeep and looking after it?
Timber has improved enormously over the last few years. Again, just in terms of obviously engineered timber is typically the way forward now, which is essentially sort of a posh laminated thing, but you know, a lot better than that. You've then also got the paint technology that we use these days. It's a microporous paint technology. We would expect that to last for actually 12 to 15 years before you would even need to think about repainting it. We actually give an 8-year guarantee on the paint finish. So, you know, it's not what you might remember, certainly from when I was a kid, when we had timber windows where Dad was having to repaint the windows every probably 4 to 5 years. And even then it was flaking and looking a bit of a mess by that stage, frankly.
And then
and then finally your composite windows. Composite literally means 2 different materials joined together. So in this case, what we're looking at is a very beautiful project that I did over in Windsor, where you've got the timber on the inside. It can also be PVC on the inside, and then typically aluminium on the outside. If you flick to the other picture there, Chris, that we've got. So those are exactly the same windows that we were looking at from the outside. And it's actually in a slightly different room now, because that's the bedroom, so that's on the first floor, but they are the same windows. So you can see that from the outside, actually they went for a sort of a browny bronzy aluminium on the outside, but on the inside, if you just flip back to that, Chris, they actually went for a walnut on the inside, which is, and this is a company called Internorm. They make beautiful, beautiful windows, very high end. So then they're not cheap, I'll be honest. But again, you know, if you've got a contemporary project, if you're going for what's called passive house type strategy, which is a very low insulation values, then Internorm is the company that can deliver that. They've got
you can get a different look from inside and outside. That's all.
Yeah, that's it, exactly. So it's super contemporary from the outside, as you can see, and then from the inside, you've got just that beautiful, beautiful. And you can see they've even matched the worktop to the to the actual walnut of the of both. It's just a stunning property. It's a beautiful project to be involved with. But again, you know, there was an awful lot of fenestration in that. You know, it was
okay.
Okie dokie. So those are your 4 different basic types.
Yeah.
Then you've got the actual technology itself. So actually, a few sort of that's the same project. Funnily enough, just go back one, Chris, again. That's that same the same project I was talking from the front of the house with the walnut. No, keep going. That one, yeah. That's it from the rear of the property.
Oh wow! Okay.
So it was quite a project to be involved in that one.
Quite a project.
So so actually talking about insulation, and that's one of the things, you know, some key tips here now. When you're doing a new build, typically U values are key. That's what you've also got what they call SAP calcs. Your architect will talk about SAP calcs, which is basically just general insulation requirements, and you achieve these SAP calcs by different sort of methods, i.e., you know, it's about sort of meeting government requirements now. So for instance, you know, have you got solar panels on the roof, for example? Have you got, you know, ground source heat pumps and things like that? You know, they all help with the SAP calcs. But from a fenestration point of view, it's about obviously insulation qualities and how much, because obviously things like solar panels, ground source heat pumps are contributing in a positive way, where fenestration is that obviously we're sort of trying to negate the amount of energy that is being allowed to escape. So what U values do is literally measure that energy value, and you know, without going into, you know, the actual detail of it, it is essentially how much energy is being lost through your windows on an annual basis.
Okay. Yeah.
So minimum U value is 1.6. Now your standard U value for sort of PVC double glazing is about 1.3. Actually, aluminium is not as good an insulator as a good example. So aluminium will typically actually be about 1.6, although we have actually now ourselves as a company just introduced a new range of aluminium, which actually now has a 1.4 U value, which is much, much better than it was. As I say, PVC about 1.3, double glazed timber, typically about 1.3 as well. So they have a very similar U value. But then Internorm, which I mentioned earlier, which were those composite products, they actually have a U value triple glaze now, admittedly, of as low as 0.7.
Okay.
So that's very, very, you know, much. I mean, you will literally notice the difference in insulation between the two. Now, on saying that, we do live in a temperate climate. You know, we're not northern Sweden or, you know, the wilds of the Russian steppes or anything like that. So actually, typically, you know, 1.3 is perfectly good enough, you know, in terms of what you would experience. And, you know, if your double glazing is 20 years old, for instance, or you've even still got single glazing, you would still notice a massive difference between that 20-year-old double glazing, which probably has a U value of about 2.5. Single glazing has a U value of about 4, by the way, just to put it into context. To then go to a 1.3 U value is still a massive difference. What I would say, you know, and we do see this from time to time, is that you get architects who just will pluck out a frivolous U value and sort of say, oh yeah, we need to hit 1.1. Right. And you know, our first question is always why. Right. You know, that is, you know, incredibly unusual. So, you know, don't be afraid. You know, well, get us involved as early as possible, because
I guess that's the thing, isn't it? Having that conversation, revealing your expertise.
Because sometimes in the nicest possible way, architects can't know about everything, and they'll kind of say, oh yeah, we need our glazing to be 1.1, and that's like, but that's going to cost you an extra £10,000.
Right.
You know what I mean? And actually, if they're doing that because of a SAP calc, they can achieve that much, much cheaper elsewhere than just suddenly saying, oh, well, your glazing needs to be 1.1.
Yeah. And you were saying yesterday as well on the Q&A that we had with the panel about, like, actually, they said another kind of great reason to get you guys involved as early as possible is because sometimes you're able to maybe like just slightly change configurations or sizes and actually save kind of huge amounts of money on a project. Is that right?
Yeah.
So where you
and that's absolutely right. You know, you've hit the nail on the head there, is that size is key. Okay, so as a really good example, just to use something specific, if you wanted a 2-panel sliding door that was exactly 5 meters wide, I could do that in actually probably 4 or 5 different products. Okay, that would range in cost from sort of, I don't know, £7,000 or £8,000 to £20,000, for instance. But maybe not that much, but you get my point. As soon as you go over that, as soon as you go over wanting 2 panels in more than 5 meters, suddenly that choice drops down to 2. And those 2 are both very expensive. So then you're absolutely looking at the £20,000 end of things rather than the £8,000 end of things. And so what you're then doing is you're just narrowing your options completely. And it might have been that you go with that £20,000 product because that's what you want, and that's absolutely fine. But it's just about trying to keep your options as broad as possible in a project that you might, if the project is a £50,000 project in total, because it's a rare, might be more than about £70,000 or £80,000, because it's a rear extension, we've just completely blown that budget then. So the earlier you can bring me into that, the better, to give you the most option, and choice. And obviously there's always more than one way to skin that particular rabbit. You can of course go to a 3-panel or even a 4-panel, for instance, and still achieve what you want to achieve, but it's having that sort of conversation. So size is key. It's not just about product quality as though as well, it's about glass thickness too, because then when you start having big panel sizes, then the glass thickness needs to go up, and again the cost of that glass goes up exponentially. The logistics of actually installing that as well, if we start, if you as a very good example, a 4 meter, so a 2 meter by 2 meter wide piece of glass, which isn't that big, in modern standards. If you're doing a sliding door, for instance, that requires 6 mil toughened glass. Standard is 4 mil, by the way, and that would weigh 120 kilograms. So that's the equivalent of 5 very heavy suitcases that you would take on holiday with you, all in one very large area. Again, if that's on a first floor as well, for instance, because again we see that quite often these days, then we're going to need machinery to start lifting that into place. There's no way that even multiple blokes can manhandle that up to a first floor area. So suddenly you're talking about hiring a machinery which is going to cost you an extra £1,000 straight away. So it's about factoring those sorts of costs as well. Sliding doors, panels over 2.2 meters wide by 2.5 meters high, as I just mentioned. Again, you're getting to the more expensive side of things. Bifold doors, the cost of bifold doors is per panel. So as a good example, if you had a 3 meter wide by 2.4 meter high door, you could do that as 3 panels, 3 1 meter wide panels. They'd be quite wide, but you could. But that would actually be quite a bit cheaper than doing it as 4 panels, for instance. Then be 750 wide, for instance. It is the cost per panel. So if you said, for example, a panel was £1,500 each, you'd be £4,500 for a 3 panel, but you'd be £6,000 for a 4 panel for exactly the same size of bifold, essentially. So that's something to bear in mind. Standard entrance doors, again, with these new builds, we're more and more these days seeing, French doors that are going over 2 meters wide, going over 2.3 meters high. Again, it starts to get expensive as soon as you go over that. We have to use specialist products that can do that.
Yeah.
So again, it's just bearing things like that in mind, really.
I guess it's good that the options are there though as well. That's the other key, isn't it? That if we do have
that's right.
specific requirements, for the dream projects, that it's talking to you guys and just working out.
I mean, that's one of our key jobs really, is to help the client to actually interpret what the architect has designed, and actually, again, frankly, in the nicest possible way, in how architects are brilliant at drawing pretty pictures, but then I've got to then kind of work out, well, hang on, it looks great on paper, but actually in reality, you can't do this. Or we can do this, but it's going to cost you £10,000 more than you thought it might. So it is that sort of thing of we're the architects draw the dream, and then we're the ones that live in the real world and
you have to deliver it,
figure out how to do it. Exactly.
Cool. All right. Well,
and sometimes curse the architects under our breath as well. But,
well, Paul, I think we could probably talk all day and looking at your website and the amount of other things that you do as well, the orangeries and conservatories and everything else. I mean, you just cover such a vast amount of products. So I'm going to recommend to everybody watching that you obviously do check out the thamesbaywindows.com website, because it is full of just inspiring projects, visuals like we've seen today, all the works.
We have, I think at last count, well over 200 projects on our website. So you can pretty much know that if you go on there, there'll be something that is, similar to what you do. And there's also a sort of a search bar down the right hand side where you a filter where you can refine what you're looking for. So if you're looking specifically for timber windows, you can filter it to timber windows. And even with aluminium as a good example, you can filter that to heritage aluminium, contemporary aluminium, and so on and so forth. So there'll hopefully be a project there that is relevant to you.
So we've got time for a couple of quick questions. We've got a couple here. So I'm just going to recap on your offer that you mentioned as well, because you're generously offering everyone that's visited Inspire Design Home Show 50% off the 3D visualization service. So for everyone that wants to find out more, simply go to the exhibitor section, find Thames Valley Window Company there, and click through, and then you'll be able to fill in this form, submit your details, and they'll honour that discount. And as we can see, it's 100% worthwhile, I think, just to actually understand.
And I should mention as well, and that's our sort of lead offer. But we're with any sort of sizable project like these sorts of projects are, clearly there is a conversation to be had on our general pricing as well. We are, we're absolutely gonna sharpen our pencil for clients that are doing major projects like this, as opposed to sort of, just 2 PVC windows or whatever it might be, so that's our lead offer. But we will always, we're very competitive anyway, but we will always look to sharpen our pencil on major projects for sure.
Superb. Okay, well, Paul and the team as well are on the live chats. If there's any questions, then just ask, or all the contact details are within the profile page as well. So if you've got a few minutes, Paul, we've just got a couple of quick questions, hopefully, to kind of go through. So first one is in regards to then the period projects, and so basically, how hard are period projects to install, and what do I need to think through? So I guess is that in regards to
I mean, I'm kind of guessing that there's a lot of sort of possible answers to that question. So without sort of being here for the next half an hour, sort of going through it all, that has multiple implications. If you say a period project, specifically if you're talking about listed buildings, then listed buildings have their own can of worms that, I'll be honest, are, can be painful, frankly, but equally, you can get there in the end with, but there are more hoops that you have to jump through. There is no doubt about that with period properties. I'm working on one at the moment, actually, where, fully enough, and it does depend on your local authority as well, and how sensible the local planning officer is being, and so on and so forth, because it's ultimately they that hold the keys to that particular castle, if you like, in terms of allowing you what they'll allow you to do. But listed buildings are their own sort of half-hour conversation, frankly. Then you've got conservation areas, And now again, conservation areas, typically nowhere near as stringent as period properties, but they will have their own set of rules. Typically with conservation areas, and you will probably know if you live in a conservation area, then you will have to stick to the same material as what was installed, usually timber, but sometimes aluminium as well. It is a massive rarity where you've got PVC windows in there, although there are some what are conservation areas now where you might have PVC windows because there were crimes against fenestration back in the 1970s and 1980s. But even there, even if you've got PVC, they will then insist that typically these days that you return the property to what would have been in there originally. Again, typically timber or aluminium in most cases. On a more standard period property, well, you know, no major massive differences there. You know, obviously, you know, with a 100-year plus property, which is typically what we're talking about, you know, turn of the 20th century and earlier, then, you know, there might be remedial work sometimes that need looking at. Sometimes, you know, window lintels can be problematic. But we will, you know, even me, you know, I'm very used to spotting issues like that. You know, we do go out and do site visits, of course, you know, so we can talk to you about issues like that. But that's typically, you know, it is the fabric of the building that you're looking at with period properties more than anything. We have had the odd period property where the windows just aren't square at all. You know, because they're literally a bit like that twisted house in Windsor, if you've ever been there next to the Guildhall. Castle. That's probably the worst example I've ever seen, but they can have their own section.
Cool. All right. So yeah, obviously that's great to know that you've got good experience in that area. So anyone who's thinking about that, just get in touch. And then the last question is what sort of guarantees I should look for. So does that vary by type of window and manufacturer and things?
Yes, I mean typically it's you know, we give a 10-year standard guarantee on everything, but then the different products have their own sort of specialist guarantees. I've already alluded to the 8-year paint guarantee, of course, with the timber, which is specific to timber. Timber also has a 25-year guarantee against rot and warping, for instance. Again, that's very specific to timber. But the majority of time, it's a 10-year guarantee. But I would say, of course, and this goes for any company, not just ours, is more importantly, it's not the guarantees, but it's the security of the company that you're dealing with, because you know a 10-year guarantee is all well and good, but if that company goes out of business in a couple of years' time, then the guarantee means nothing. So it is about, you know, what we pride ourselves on is, yes, we're a large regional company these days, but we have been running for 35 years. We have, you know, still family run, by the way, as well, I should mention. So you know, the two founders are actually in semi-retirement these days, but very much have a, you know, an input into the business still. Both of their sons are still, you know, two separate sons on both sides are still heavily involved in the business, one being the managing director now. So, you know, it is still very much has that family ethos, but also that secure ethos of a company that's been around in this community for 35 years now.
Yeah, lovely. Okay, great stuff. Paul, thanks so much for all your time. And I mean, that was just the amount of detail and depth there was superb. And I think it totally, does Thames Valley Window Company justice in that sense. And obviously everyone should get in touch, check out your profile and go from there. So thanks a lot for that. And we look forward to talking again soon.
Absolutely, pleasure, Chris. Thanks again for your time.
Enjoy your Sunday. Thanks, Paul. Cheers.
Thanks, you too, mate. Take care.